Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I know it's Thanksgiving Day, but I was hoping to get on here before everybody headed out for either lunch with their family or supper with their family. I know most people either do lunch or supper, not breakfast, but my daughter said she was sick, so if she's sick and doesn't want to go anywhere, then by grannis, I'm staying home with her. So I figured, hey, let's do a video. We'll call this our Thanksgiving Day video. If you do come on here live, we're not going to be in a hurry today. We're just going to sit here and talk. So if we're on here for an hour, that's perfectly fine. But I want to talk some college football. If you come on here live, feel free to leave a comment in the comments section down below. Hey there, Kevin. We're talking some college football, so stick around, buddy. Glad you are here. You are the first commenter on this Thanksgiving Day, Thursday morning. Make sure you give the video a like and a thumbs up if you have not yet subscribed. Please do so. It takes about 2 seconds and helps the channel out tremendously. But coming up, we have college football all day tomorrow and all day Saturday, since it is rivalry weekend and it's Thanksgiving weekend. Of course, we have the 3 NFL games today that I discussed back on Tuesday, and the college football game that's coming on tonight, which I think is going to be a really good game. But all the college football action for the weekend outside of the game tonight starts tomorrow at noon, when we have Oregon State and Boise State on Fox. Oklahoma State, who is just flat out awful this year. This might be the worst year they've had under Mike Gundy. They are terrible this year. They're taking on Colorado. That game will be on ABC. Minnesota and Wisconsin on CBS. Miami of Ohio and Bowling Green on ESPN. Ball State and Ohio on the CBS Sports Network. Navy and East Carolina on ESPN. That's all the noon games tomorrow. So there's 6 noon games tomorrow. One on Fox, ABC, CBS, ESPNU, the CBS Sports Network, and ESPN. So if you're off work tomorrow and you're home, you've got 6 options. The best noon game is probably going to be Navy and East Carolina. East Carolina fired their head coach about a month ago, and they have played like a whole new team since they fired him. That should be a good game. Minnesota and Wisconsin will probably be a good game, but nobody likes good old-fashioned football where you run the ball and play defense. So I'm not going to tell anybody to watch that game, but it'll probably be a good game. Oklahoma State and Colorado normally be a good game, but Oklahoma State, as I said, is just flat out awful this year. I don't know what happened, but they had one of the best running backs in the country last year, and they brought him back this year, and they just cannot run the ball at all. And their quarterback is not good enough to throw the ball 45 times to beat somebody, and they just can't run the ball. Again, if you come on here live, feel free to leave a comment section down below. Make sure you give the video a like and a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. 3:30 tomorrow on ABC, we have the Egg Bowl with Mississippi State against Ole Miss. A lot of folks say that the reason why Ole Miss lost last week is because Lane Kiffin did an interview sometime during the week last week and come out and said that he thinks it's bad to play in the SEC championship game, and he's the only coach that'll come out and say that. Other coaches and players agree with him, but they're scared to say it, but they feel like it's only hurtful to play in that game, and there's nothing beneficial about it. So nobody wants to play in it. So they think that he was spending all of his week last week trying to figure out how to avoid that game, hoping to avoid that game, worried about not missing that game, and forgot the game plan for Florida, which they still had a chance to win, but Jackson Dart threw a pick on Ole Miss's last 2 drives. CBS Sports Network, Liberty against Sam Houston State. FS1, we have Utah State against Colorado State. 4 o'clock on CBS, we have Stanford and San Jose State. Now tomorrow night, the prime time games, 7:30 on ABC, we have Georgia Tech and Georgia, and Georgia Tech's head coach and Georgia's head coach both played in this rivalry. So we know, even though they won't come out and say it, that they both hate the opposite program. They call it clean old-fashioned hate, which I'm good with that, because calling it clean old-fashioned hate is telling you that, we want to beat them, we hate them, but we're not going to be dirty, we're not going to be nasty, we're not going to try to hurt them. We just want to go out there and beat them because it's clean old-fashioned hate. That game is 7:30 on ABC, and I think, at least to my recollection, to my knowledge, this is the first time this game's been played on a Friday night. If it's happened before, it's been a long time, but I think it's the first time. NBC tomorrow night, two teams that they say hate each other, and they play the last game of the year every year, but they say unless you live in the Midwest, you don't understand the hatred between these two teams. Nebraska and Iowa will be on NBC. If you're jumping on here, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. 8 o'clock on Fox tomorrow night, we have Utah and Central Florida. Now, there's been a lot of buzz going around this week that this is going to be Kyle Whittingham's last game coaching Utah. And I don't know if it's true or not. And if it is true, I don't know if it's true because he just decided he's done with the whole transfer portal NIL thing, or if he just decided, hey, I'm getting old, I've coached long enough, I'm done, or if he has some kind of physical issue that we'll find out later on down the line, or if it's just that, Utah is really good every year, and this year they're flat out awful, and he just doesn't like this feeling. He's like, you know what, I'm done. And I'm not saying he's going to retire, but there's been some rumblings ever since about Monday that this is going to be Kyle Whittingham's last game coaching Utah, so I guess we'll find out. Probably tomorrow, because if they play tonight, then he'll be a free man by tomorrow because they're not going to a bowl game. Now let's move to Saturday. Saturday at noon, we have Michigan and Ohio State, and of course that game is on Fox. That's probably the game that everybody's going to tune into, but I got a feeling they're going to regret it because Michigan has been the one team that Ryan Day cannot beat, which the last couple of years it was not a bad thing because Michigan's been really good. This year they're bad. So I think Ohio State is going to beat Michigan by 3 touchdowns. I could be wrong, but I think if they got a chance, they're going to beat them by 30 because Ryan Day really wants this win, and this is the year to get it because Michigan can't score. They shouldn't score more than 14 points at the most, barring special team scores or defensive scores. ABC, we have Tennessee and Vanderbilt. ESPN is the game that everybody should be watching. It's the highest ranked game this week between two opposing teams. I believe, I'm not mistaken, this is the year that these two teams are ranked the highest in the polls. Hey there, Hakan. Greetings from Turkey. Well, glad to have you here all the way from Turkey. Good morning, Austin. Glad to have you here. But Clemson and South Carolina have played many a times in the past where, both teams will be ranked, but one will be top 10 and one will be, 24, 25, or one is ranked, the other one's not ranked. But this year, one is 12th and one's 15th. So this is the year that they're playing each other, and both teams are ranked in the top 15. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to pronounce that, Hakan. I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Tell me how to pronounce it, and I'll change the pronunciation, and I apologize. But you got one team ranked 12th, one team ranked 15th. They say that both teams have a chance to go to the playoffs. I'll be done in a minute, buddy, okay? Let me finish the video, okay? But I'm not convinced on that. I know Clemson right now is 12th, but they've still got to go up one spot just to for sure get in because they have all the Big 12 jumbled up right behind them. Yes, we're talking about football, and I believe the Big 12 champion will pass them. So I think just to be safe, they need to go up at least one more spot, which they could if somebody above them loses. But I'm not so sure Clemson wins the game. South Carolina is really, really, really good. But a lot of folks think if the Gamecocks win, they're going to the playoffs. And I'm not sure about that. I've said ever since the offseason that I'm not sure we'll see a three-loss team in the playoffs. If we do, it'll be Alabama or Ohio State or, Georgia, one of the blue blood programs, not South Carolina. I know they've won 6 in a row, and they're probably playing the best football in that conference right now, but it's just hard for me to believe that they're going to make the playoffs with a win. But if they beat Clemson, by 3 touchdowns, and a few teams above them lose besides Clemson, it's possible, but I just don't see it. But Clemson has a chance, but I'd be stunned if they get in unless Miami loses, and then Clemson plays SMU for the conference championship and then wins, and then, of course, Clemson will be in. It's American football, Hakan. And Austin, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that my daughter is sick. She's been sick since Tuesday, and she told me about 5:30 this morning, Daddy, I don't want to go anywhere. And I said, that's fine, baby. If you want to stay home, we'll stay home. So I am home with her. So I am going nowhere today, sitting on my fat butt and watching some football. I'm not going to make her go out if she doesn't feel like going out because she is my little girl. So I'll be home with her. I want her to get better, not get worse. That's why I went ahead and came on here and did this video, because I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Hakan, I do watch soccer every now and then. I generally only watch the World Cup because where I am, soccer is not real popular. It's growing in popularity, but it's still not real popular. So it's not on TV a whole lot, and usually if it is, it's the middle of the night. So it's hard to, be able to stay up and watch it. And usually when it does come on, it's always a different team. So as soon as you see one team, you don't see them again for a year. And by that time, a lot's changed. So it's hard to follow it in my neck of the woods because it doesn't come on TV a whole lot. But I usually try to watch the World Cup every time it happens. Hopefully one day soccer will grow in this part of the country and it'll be on TV more and more, besides in the middle of the night or early on a Saturday or Sunday morning. The Big Ten Network tomorrow at noon, we have Illinois and Northwestern. Hey there, Pickles. Glad to have you here. The SEC Network, we have Louisville and Kentucky. This is one of those rivalries that it seems like every year, no matter how good or bad, Kentucky beats Louisville, but I don't think they will Saturday because Kentucky is flat out awful. Yes, Austin, I watch baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan. It's probably my favorite sport, to be honest with you. A lot of times during baseball season, I try to give a Braves report about once a week because I know a lot of people that like the Braves, but I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm a baseball nerd. The older I get, the more I enjoy baseball. The ACC network, we have at Duke and Wake Forest. ESPN2, Kansas and Baylor. Fox Sports 1, we have West Virginia and Texas Tech. See you later, Hakan. Thanks for commenting and thanks for being with us. Come back some other time. Usually when I go live, it's late at night, but I figure since it's Thanksgiving, people would be home and be up and hopefully wouldn't be leaving their house yet. If you're getting ready to cook something or go somewhere, turn this on in the background. You ain't got to see my face. You know what I look like. ESPNU, we have Louisiana and Louisiana Monroe. 3 o'clock on the CW, we have Pittsburgh and Boston College. 3:30 on the Big Ten Network, Maryland and Penn State. CBS, Notre Dame and USC. I hope USC beats them. Notre Dame kind of makes up their own rules and nobody says anything about it. So I'm hoping they get beat and they fall outside of the top 12. They probably lose and fall to about 10, though, to be honest with you. ESPN, Miami, and Syracuse, and probably all of Clemson Nation will be watching that game as soon as the Clemson game is done, so they can watch that game and hope that Syracuse pulls off the upset. I do watch some sports on Peacock, Austin, whenever I get a chance and get some free time, which is not very often. ESPN2 has an old-fashioned, long-standing ACC rivalry, California and SMU. And then we have Auburn and Alabama on ABC. Fox has Arizona State and Arizona. The SEC network has Arkansas and Missouri, and I want Arkansas to win that game just so I can hopefully finally see Missouri fall out of the rankings. They've had no business being ranked all year long. Everybody knows that the only reason they're still ranked is because all the teams in the SEC that beat them can have a good, key, big-time win, even though Missouri ain't worth a darn. Hopefully they'll lose that game and fall out of the rankings. I think a lot of people, a lot of times, want to keep these teams ranked because all these so-called experts don't want to admit that they're wrong. And Missouri came out ranked in the top 10 this year. And I knew right then they're way, way overrated. But these so-called experts don't want to all of a sudden unrank them because then you've got to come out and say, yeah, I was wrong with them. They're not any good. So you try to keep them ranked just so you don't look as foolish as you did back in June, July, and August. But Missouri is not any good. Fox Sports 1, Rutgers, and Michigan State. The Big Ten Network, Fresno, and UCLA. Who'd have ever thought 10 years ago you'd turn on the Big Ten Network on Rivalry Saturday and see Fresno State and UCLA. The ACC Network has NC State and North Carolina. This will be Mac Brown's last game as the head coach of North Carolina. Everybody that watches this channel knows that I've said for 3 years that Mac Brown is terrible. He's awful. He's overrated. I've never understood the Mac Brown love. It makes zero sense to me. I don't understand it. But supposedly he tried to quit after the James Madison game, and they talked him into sticking around. I guess it's because they didn't want to hire an interim coach right there in mid-season. And then on Monday this week, Mac Brown said he plans on returning next year. And then on Tuesday, the Tar Heels said, you're not coming back because we don't want you. Hey there, Bryant. Glad to have you here. So it'll be the last game for Mac Brown. North Carolina is 6-5, so win or lose, they're going to a bowl game, but they've already told Mac Brown he's not coaching the bowl game. Only coach in America that's had 2 consecutive first-round NFL draft pick quarterbacks and great running backs and great receivers, and ain't accomplished diddly squat, but yet he's so good. And I've seen all the supposed rumored names to take over North Carolina, and if that's the best they can find, they better off sticking with Mac Brown. Mac Brown can't coach, but you know he's going to give you 7 or 8 wins every year. He might have great talent, but about 8 wins is his peak. But the leading candidate, supposedly, if all the rumors are true, is Freddie Kitchen. And if I have to pick between Mac Brown and Freddie Kitchen, I don't think you can keep Freddie out of the kitchen from the looks of him. So I think I'd stick with Mac Brown. CBS Sports Network, Central Michigan, and Northern Illinois. Those are all the 3:30 games. 4 o'clock on ESPNU, Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky. A lot of folks think that Rich Rodriguez is going to leave Jacksonville State and go back to Morgantown to become the coach of the Mountaineers for the second time. Austin, I watch highlights usually on YouTube because WWE only shows you what they want you to see. If I want to watch highlights, I want to see it all. So typically, if I'm gonna watch highlights, I'll watch it on YouTube. 6:30 on the CW, we have Wyoming and Washington State. Then 7 o'clock on Fox Sports One, we have Purdue and Indiana. And I do not understand all the hatred toward Indiana. And everybody knows by now that I believe in being fair. I don't believe in showing favoritism. And people want to talk about Indiana not being any good. I don't know how good they are. But Texas avoided Alabama. They avoided Ole Miss. They avoided Tennessee. So outside of Georgia, they avoided every decent team in the SEC. So Texas has played the bottom half of the SEC all year long, and they struggled with Arkansas. They struggled with Florida. I mean, if you look at their scores, they're winning by about 10 points a game. But yet, Texas is a playoff team. Indiana, outside of their one game with Michigan, they're destroying everybody, and yet people are mad that they're in the playoffs. So Texas can avoid everybody worth the darn in that conference, and they're a playoff team, even though they're winning close games. Indiana blows everybody out, and they're not a playoff team. Why is that? Because they don't play in the SEC. If Texas can be in the playoffs, and Indiana can be in the playoffs, at least they're playing about the same level of competition, and Indiana's beating them by 3 touchdowns as opposed to Texas winning by 10 points. ESPN2 has Florida and Florida State. Hey there, Eric. Glad to have you here, man. I'm glad you jumped on here. We are talking some college football. Happy Thanksgiving to you. As well, I've already mentioned a couple times in the video that my daughter is sick. She's been sick ever since about Tuesday. And this morning about 5:30, she said, Daddy, I don't want to go anywhere. I said, okay, baby, I'll stay home with you. So Mama went out and took one of our twins with her, and I'm home with the other twin and our daughter, but I'm not going to make her go anywhere if she doesn't want to go. You don't think Alabama should be in the playoffs. I totally agree with you. I was just, right before you came on, talking about Indiana, and I'm not sure that Indiana's any good. I don't know, but I'm all about being right down the middle. I'm all about being fair, and to me, it's not fair that Texas avoided Ole Miss, avoided Alabama, avoided Tennessee. So outside of the Georgia game, Texas has avoided every decent team in the SEC, and it's like, well, Texas, they're in the playoffs, and not only are they in, but they're ranked third right now. So even if they lose to A&M, they're probably still going to get in. And it's like, well, Texas in the playoffs, and they're beating Florida and Arkansas by 10 points, and nobody bats an eye. Indiana's beating everybody by 3 touchdowns, and they shouldn't be in the playoffs. What's the difference? Texas shouldn't get favoritism just because they play in the SEC. If Texas can struggle with nobodies and go to the playoffs, then Indiana should be able to destroy nobodies and go to the playoffs. There's no difference. They're playing about the same level of competition since Texas avoided all the good teams, and Texas wins by 10, and Indiana wins by 25, but yet Texas should go to the playoffs, and Indiana shouldn't. It makes zero sense. That's why I always say I hate favoritism, and that's a prime example of favoritism. Nobody has talked about Texas all year long. They should be in the playoffs. Don't worry about it. Why? If Indiana shouldn't be in, Texas shouldn't be in. That's just nothing but fair. Hey there, Rick. Glad to have you here. And Florida should destroy Florida State. Florida State is just flat out awful. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Rick. Glad you're here. Feel free to leave a comment anytime you want. Make sure you give the video a like and a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. It takes about 2 seconds and it helps the channel out tremendously. But DJ has said that he wants to get a medical red shirt and return to Florida State next year. But unless they've got a heck of a recruiting class, which last I checked, they don't. If I'm DJ, I'm not so sure that I want to return to Florida State. I might return to college football, but it wouldn't be in Tallahassee. I mean, there's no way they can be as bad next year as they are this year, but I don't know that they'll be a lot better. Maybe they win 6 games next year. ESPN has Oklahoma and LSU. 7:30 on NBC, we have Oregon and Washington. 7:30 on ABC, we have Texas and Texas A&M. Fox, we have Kansas State and Iowa State. And if you have not been following along with all the tiebreakers in the Big 12, don't. It'll give you a headache. But there's a chance they could have a 9-team tie for Big 12 champion. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if Arizona State wins and Iowa State wins, that's who plays for the Big 12 championship. I believe that's 2 teams that have the tiebreakers, but it might be Arizona State and BYU, but I know for sure if Arizona State wins, they're in. The other team, I think, is Iowa State, but don't quote me on that. But there's a chance there could be a 9-team tie at the top of the Big 12. 8 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, we have Nevada and UNLV. The ACC Network, Virginia and Virginia Tech, and I believe this will be Brent Pry's last game with Virginia Tech. It's his third year, and they're just not showing enough progress, if any progress. ESPNU, Marshall and James Madison. Then the late night games for all the West Coast folks. 10:15 on ESPN, we have Houston and BYU. And 10:30 on Fox Sports 1, we have Air Force and San Diego State. The reason why I said I think it's BYU because earlier this week, when I was listening to all the possible Big 12 scenarios, I believe they said that they didn't think Arizona State would lose, but it was possible. But nobody thinks that Houston beats BYU, which leads me to believe that it's Arizona State and BYU if both of those teams win coming up on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see who North Carolina hires to be their coach. And will they hire them in time for the bowl game, or will they let some interim guy coach the bowl game? I've always said, like, Clemson's a great example. When they fired Tommy Bowden back in 2008, they let Dabo be the interim coach, and then Dabo was able to become the full-time coach. But had they let Tommy Bowden finish out that season, Dabo Swinney would have never been the Clemson coach. But he only got the job because it's mid-season. You can't go out and get another coach from another program in the middle of the season. So they had already decided that, Tommy Bowden was not coming back the following year, so let's go ahead and get him out of here and, give Dabo a chance. If it works, great. If not, he had his chance. Didn't work out. They got a lot of good teams in one division. Going to be sad not seeing a lot of good teams not make it. Well, Rick, I agree, but the only problem is I'm not so sure there's a lot of great teams. I think there's a lot of good teams. And one of the things I always said before the playoffs expanded, the last couple of years in the 14 playoff, the first round games are generally usually blowouts. And 1 or 2 times the national title game was a blowout because you have 1 or 2 good teams and that's it. So if you struggle to find 4 great teams, to me, you're not going to find 12 great teams. So I'm not sure there are 12 great teams. I think there's a lot of decent teams, average teams, good teams, but not great teams. But my only problem with it is, college football now has built itself just like the NFL. Every time the NFL changes a rule, college football changes that same rule. Don't be surprised to see college football adopt the NFL kickoff rule either next year, maybe 2 years. They put in a 2-minute warning this year. Why? Because NFL has it. But yet in the NFL, it's very, very simple. The team that has the better record goes to the playoffs. And in college football, people make it complicated. They want teams as 8-4 to go to the playoffs. And to me, that's not fair. To me, you're watering down the regular season when you're letting teams go out there and lose and not get punished for it. Wins and losses should matter. If wins and losses don't matter, why keep score? Just tell people, you know what, go out there, have fun. Nobody get angry. Nobody get upset, but we're not going to keep score. And Greg Sankey pretty much gave that away. I believe it was week before last when he sent a tweet out. I think it was Twitter. I'm really not sure, but I just saw it that he sent a tweet out talking about, how tough the SEC team schedules are. But nowhere in that list did he talk about wins and losses. He just said this game is big because it got played. This game is big because it happened. Well, who wins the game should matter. And now you got people talking about how they believe the committees pretty much came out and told people, well, you're not going to be punished for losing your conference championship game. So why play it? And that's why I said, I think on Tuesday, that I believe in a couple of years you'll see the conference championship games go away because Lane Kiffin claims nobody wants to be in it. And now you have the playoff committee saying, well, if you lose, it's not a big deal. So you're pretty much telling teams that make it to their conference championship game, if you get there and you rest your whole entire team and you lose, it don't matter. You're going to the playoffs. So why play the game? It makes zero sense. If wins and losses don't matter, and the only thing that matters is the games got played, stop keeping score. It's a waste of the scorekeeper's time. It's a waste of the player's time. It's a waste of the ref's time. If the only thing that matters is the game got played. No. Who wins and who loses should matter. Hey there, Sharice. Glad to have you here. I think Army will always be ranked low, unfortunately, Rick. I wish they kind of got treated the way everybody else does, but since they don't play in one of the big-time conferences, they're never going to be ranked that high. And Sharice, I'm glad you agree with me because I don't understand why it's so complicated that wins and losses are supposed to matter. I don't know why all of a sudden in the last 5 years in college football we say that wins and losses don't matter. The game got played, that's all that matters. No, wins and losses should matter. And that's why I hate the playoffs expanding because it's basically an SEC Big Ten invitational. And it's not fair to every other conference. Just because you don't play in that conference, you're not going to the playoffs. And that's not fair. It's supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be no favoritism, right down the middle. And it's definitely not. And Rick was asking about Army a while ago. If Army played in the SEC, they'd be in the top 5 right now. But since they don't, they're not. And the playoff committee's pretty much telling these teams, well, if you lose your conference championship game, we're not going to hold it against you because you got there. I guarantee that's true in the Big Ten. And I guarantee that's true in the SEC. But if you let a team in the Big 12 or the ACC lose their conference championship game, and they're not going to the playoffs. But if you're not going to penalize the Big 10 for losing, then you shouldn't penalize the Big 12 for losing. If you're not going to penalize the SEC for losing, then you shouldn't penalize the ACC for losing. It's supposed to be fair. And they make it blatantly obvious that even though the playoffs have expanded, it's still all about blue bloods. It's still all about the brand, and it shouldn't be. It should be about what you've done on the field. Like a few minutes ago, Eric mentioned Alabama. Alabama is the most Jekyll and Hyde bipolar team I've ever seen. Some weeks they're the best team in the country, but on the weeks they're bad, they're bad. And when Jalen Milroe is awful, he's awful. And they've got them ranked 13th, just so if one team over them loses, they're right back in the playoff picture. And it's not fair that you've got teams with 1 loss and 2 losses that you're going to leave out for a team that has 3 losses. And I might even understand it better if their 3 losses were to Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee. But they lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. So don't give me this their schedule's tough thing when they're losing to teams that suck. But yet they're right there. Why? Because they're Alabama. And that's not fair. You want to have a team like Army that's barely even ranked, and then you're going to rank somebody like Alabama that loses to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt inside the top 10. It makes zero sense. So unless they're going to stop showing favoritism, they need to come out next year before the 25 season starts and say, from now on, we're not going to keep score. The only thing that matters is who you play. So if you play 12 good teams, then you're in the playoffs. That way I can say, hey, that makes sense. But don't have a little thing out beside the team name where it says wins and losses and then tell me, well, that don't matter. Well, quit keeping track of it. Any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Sharice, I believe this is the first time I've seen you in the comments section, so glad to have you here. Please feel free to give the video a like and a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. It takes about 2 seconds and helps the channel out tremendously. Dove chocolate tastes way better than their soap. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.